Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of these crazy people that just keep eating meat and can't stop talking about it. Today, I'm having a conversation with my good pal Ayani, who came on to talk about thiamine or vitamin B1. She's been doing a lot of homework and a lot of self-experimentation to sort of optimize her situation.
Finally got over the hump. Removing straws off the camel's back, one by one, which led to symptom reduction. Carnivory did a lot. Fat adaptation was a true game changer, but the remaining mast cell activation symptoms, histamine intolerant, they were stressful. So I kept digging and looking after more solutions, introducing thiamine oxidase, nootropics, and finally thiamine. This is what really led to a better quality of life.
And she's been sending me lots of great material on the subject, and I thought it'd be fitting to have her on to talk about what she's learned and what she's been up to lately. So without further ado, here's Ayani, some of you formerly known as Karina, right?
So. Yes, yeah. Passport name is Corina, but right. I don't like it so much.
So how'd you get started down the thiamine road?
Well, so yeah, I've been now carnivore for almost 2 years, and I felt something was not as good as it should be. Yeah, and then somehow my intuition led me to investigate thiamine. I just got kicked, like, you know, sometimes you just hear, oh, you should look into this. That's intuition telling you there might be something for you in it. So I came across Elliot Overton, his videos on thiamine. He has very good videos on oxalates as well. Well, I started investigating that and felt that I really have a lot of those symptoms that are described from thiamine deficiency.
Thiamine deficiency. Fatigue, irritability, insomnia, lower back pain, nerve and muscle pain, kidney bladder issues, urinary frequency, urgency, leg and back pain, anxiety. I had those exact same symptoms. You can look it up at Hormones Matter.
Always that underlying fatigue. You just never really feel so energetic despite eating no carbs, no sugar, everything I was doing. I thought, yeah, probably all those years as a vegetarian, that was 19 years, and 4 years of veganism that really messed up my body, depleted it thoroughly, and that's why carnivory wasn't entirely the thing that restored health. There was still something that I needed to do. Yeah, and then I just tried it. I ordered some thiamine online, and then the thing is, you have to take it in high doses for a longer time. That's like 1,500 milligrams or even 1,800 milligrams. And normally they say 100 milligrams per day, and that's way not enough if you are deficient. And symptoms are way more subtle. But normally you have problems with muscles, no muscle strength or cramps or this fatigue. Also, I remember that I was always pale since puberty. I used to get a tan as a girl. I looked very healthy, and then when puberty started, then suddenly I was pale. I couldn't get this tan anymore for some reason. The possibility is that hormonal shifts can actually also be a trigger, and stress can be a trigger, trauma can be a trigger. There's a lot that can lead to thiamine deficiency. It's not just what you eat. But also at the time, during my puberty, I loved sugar. I ate a lot of sugar, chocolate and cookies and stuff.
Because when you live in Switzerland, you will love chocolate. Switzerland has the best chocolate. That's just how it is.
I think I've been thiamine deficient for decades, before I even went vegetarian and vegan, but veganism just did me in for good. Yeah, and now I'm just experimenting with it, and I already feel a little bit better.
So you started taking a high dose, and how long before you felt different?
Probably a week, I would say. Like this underlying fatigue, it's a little bit less. I don't get so tired after work anymore. Recently, I just had like 6 days in a row, and usually I would get a migraine after that, and this time it was like fine.
So your migraines initially improved when you went carnivore, right? And then, but they didn't go away completely, and there were still things that triggered them, right?
Yes, still triggered from stress, from high histamine, from not sleeping enough. There was still a lot of triggers, mainly stress, also menstrual migraines, things like that. But definitely I used to get more migraines, and now it's not so much anymore. But my goal, of course, is to get it under control entirely.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, and when I read about thiamine deficiency, it made so much sense. And if you read about chronic fatigue, or if you even read about mast cell activation syndrome, all the different symptoms, if you compare it to thiamine deficiency, it's very similar. It's very interesting. So possibly in many people there could be an underlying thiamine deficiency, but nobody's talking about it.
Do you know, have you read much about testing? Do they do a lot of testing for thiamine deficiency?
Yeah, the normal test doesn't show it properly. There is that transketolase test. That it's a special test for thiamine deficiency.
Vitamin B1 is what we're talking about, and there's quite a number of B vitamins. There's a handful that we look at regularly, and B1 is something that is in meat, but the idea is that if you've been deficient in it for a long period of time, it could be really helpful to take high doses of vitamin B1 to get over that deficiency, long-term deficiency, right?
Yeah, exactly, because it seems that your cells are not working properly anymore.
The cell danger response, when your cells are in a state of chronic alarm. How too many impact factors can block the healing cycle. CFS cell danger response, metabolic features, low energy in nature, which illustrates how many different forms of impacts can set off the alarm cells of the cell danger response as the initial part of a healing cycle. However, too many cumulative insults can cause the cell danger response to get stuck systematically in the on position, causing chronic illness and blocking the healing part of the cycle. Healing can nevertheless be reinstated by identifying our personal impact factors. Each of us is likely to have our own highly individual, bespoke set of factors, which eventually added up to the cell danger response getting stuck. So this is why no one size fits all, and carefully addressing, ameliorating, removing each of these over time. Dr. Navio is Professor of Medicine, Pediatrics and Pathology at the University of California, San Diego. He is the founder and co-director of the Mitochondrial and Metabolic Disease Center, former president of the Mitochondrial Medicine Society, and a founding associate editor of the journal Mitochondrion. He is an internationally known expert in human genetics, inborn errors of metabolism, metabolomics, and mitochondrial medicine. Dr. Navio discovered the genetic basis of Alport syndrome, the oldest Mendelian form of mitochondrial disease, and developed the first DNA test to diagnose it. Check this out if you like. It's really a very interesting video.
Only study one thing in the lab, okay? It's mitochondria, but it happens to be connected to all life on the planet. In 1681, John Dryden wrote in a poem that self-defense is nature's oldest law. All of us sitting in this room here today have received genes from our ancestors that allowed them to survive every famine, every viral infection, every plague, every hard winter until they had at least their first child from whom we descend. Okay? So we have that gene pool that allowed our ancestors to survive all of their stresses. But there are new stresses in our environment today that our ancestors had never encountered. So our genes are working with environmental changes that our ancestors never had before. And that is leading to a wave of new diseases that medicine has never seen, and an increase in diseases that were very rare before. So mitochondria are, like canaries in the coal mine. Their metabolism is so fast, literally they're breathing so fast, that small changes in their ability to breathe actually allows them to detect stress and toxicity in the environment. So they are the regulators of cell oxygen. They're the regulators of cellular defense. This can't be overstated. Mitochondria, I'll talk about mitochondria having two roles in the cell. One is energy, one is cellular defense. Power. They conduct over 500 chemical reactions in metabolism. But when they encounter danger, they send out danger signals. Okay? And these signals are received by molecular receptors on our cells that cause the cell to change its mission orders. It shifts from daily housekeeping functions, health, to defending itself. Okay, so what are some essential facts? ATP is an energy carrier that a lot of us, have spent a lot of time with. But inside the cell, it works as a metabolite, something that that is the energy currency of the cell. But outside the cell, it doesn't do that. Outside the cell, it is a signaling molecule that says to neighboring cells, there is stress in the environment. You need to change in order to help reduce the chances of disease. So it's what we call a damage-associated molecular pattern, or a DAMP, D-A-M-P. And again, mitochondria have two completely different functions. in my opinion, one of the greatest discoveries in mitochondrial biology in the last 100 years, since their identification as the seat of oxidative phosphorylation and energy production in the cell, is in 2005 when they were found to be essential for coordinating the symphony of responses in innate immunity and inflammation. Okay, so mitochondria coordinate our cellular defense system. There's actually something we can measure in the blood that shows us that this is an organic, real biological problem that we can begin to tackle in a rational and scientific way. When our paper on metabolomics and ME/CFS came out last year, they did a little study that looked at, highlighted the fact that, perhaps, that there's a real organic basis to this disease. It is not just in people's heads. There is a real biology behind this. Now onto this concept of healing. So mitochondria are involved. They change their function when a cell is injured. And under normal circumstances, they can complete a cycle that allows us to get back to health and fitness. But if that red bar is there, boy, it's blocked. So it leads us to this organizing concept of, why do people remain sick for a long time? We believe that the reason is they've encountered roadblocks to healing that prevent them from getting well. Okay? And that can be tackled in a scientific and a rational way. So if you look at health on the left, all those different lines leading to injury, that red box on the right, are different types of injuries: cuts, scrapes, infections, trauma, toxins. Okay, and they all produce different paths to the cellular state of injury. Now, evolutionary selection wasn't able to predict all the different ways that you can injure a cell, but it was able to select a way to get back to health. So the cell does not just retrace the path that led to the illness, okay? It uses a different path of molecular events to restore healing, okay? And so what we found is that the cell danger response consists of 3 sequential steps in healing that each are governed by a transition or a checkpoint that has to be released before the next stage of healing can be entered. Okay? And so if you're blocked at a point, then you cannot complete the healing cycle. So if that CDR is a red block, if you can treat that red block, and it turns out one of the steps is actually amenable to a particular new class of drugs that we call antipurenergic drugs. And if you release that, then the healing cycle can progress. Something that the whole community of scientists has really spent a great deal of time in trying to understand what genes predispose to ME/CFS, what kinds of trauma, what kinds of viruses, fungi, what kind of abnormalities are there in the immune system? T, B, and NK cells, mitochondria, enzymes in mitochondria, pesticides, solvents, cytokines. Well, we're starting to think of those as different ways of ringing the same bell, and that really what might be a unifying way of thinking of things is that there is a unified cellular response to those stresses.
As we evolved, as I ultimately found my way to the mitochondria and to nutrition and to Dr. Lonsdale and the book that you mentioned and everything else we've done.
Yeah, so I am a massive fan of I mean, that book, I read that book last year, and I will say that book is one of the best books I've ever read, honestly. I continually am back and forth, picking it up back and forth, and I think both of you just did such a fantastic job in that book. And since then, I've come across your website, and I think it's just such a fantastic resource. Hormones Matter, and especially for the technical details, you got the technical articles, but also the individual experience of people who go through really terrible things. But the main reason why I wanted to ask you onto the show was really because you co-authored the book on thiamine, and I think that thiamine in nutrition related fields is such an under-acknowledged topic. It seems like a nutrient of such importance, and that no one is really talking about it other than you guys. So would you be able to quickly just explain in a basic way for our listeners, what is thiamine?
Well, thank you for the compliment of the book. I'm very proud of it. So I'm very excited about the book.
That's her book, Thiamine Deficiency, Disease, Dysautonomia and High-Calorie Malnutrition by Dr. Derrick Lonsdale and Dr. Chandler Mars.
What is thiamine? Thiamine is vitamin B1. It's very simple. It's a B vitamin, one of many B vitamins that we need. It comes in pork, a lot of meat products. You can get it in brown rice. You can get it in a variety of things. And it's disabled by things like coffee and tea and raw fish and other things. Why it's not viewed as important is because there's presumption that we solved it. Because most of the cases, historically evolved in states of malnutrition, not necessarily the high calorie malnutrition that we have now, but the malnutrition. The thought was that once you start fortifying foods with this, that you will have solved the problem. And so no one even addresses it. So why is thiamine important? The interesting thing about thiamine is that it is at the entry point, at every entry point, and around every portion of the cycle. It's a cofactor in how we convert food, in the enzymes that convert food into ATP. So I'm old. When I studied mitochondria, we memorized the various components, but the presumption was that as long as there were sufficient calories, didn't matter what those calories came from or what they were composed of, the mitochondria were these magical black boxes that would somehow produce ATP. And they would go on doing this indefinitely, and, not a thought was given. And frankly, I never gave a thought to it. Until I met Dr. Lonsdale and until we did all this medication research that was damaging the mitochondria. So the presumption was that you really just need your basic macronutrients, carbohydrates, proteins, fats, etc., and the mitochondria will take care of everything. What is ignored is that to get from those macronutrients to ATP, you actually need functional enzymes and you need micronutrients, vitamins and minerals at each step. And there's like 22 of them you need. Thiamine happens to be the most important because of its geographic position, if you will, and because of its rate limiting step along the various pathways. And so, no matter what other deficiency you may or may not have, if you do not address thiamine, you will never heal. And it's not the only vitamin you need, but it's the one you absolutely must address before you deal with everything else. And I think that's the most difficult thing for people to realize, and why folks, they'll go on these things with folate and B12 and this, that, and the other thing, forgetting entirely that that's so much further down the pathway than thiamine. And so they wonder why they don't heal, and they seem to think that well, it must not be the nutrients. It's not the vitamins. I've done the vitamin thing and it's not working. But they haven't done the right ones yet.
You need the high dose to kick back in this healing response, because the body is naturally designed to heal itself. But if it's been deficient for such a long time, there need to be like some impulse to,
Well, I can imagine a lot of circumstances the body sort of adjusts to long-term deficiencies, right? Just like if you can't get enough food or enough of one kind of nutrient, the body makes a whole bunch of adjustments to compensate for it. And it's because you get a little bit more doesn't mean it's necessarily going to immediately go back to optimal, right? So maybe you got to tell your body, hey, there's plenty of vitamin B1 coming, so now you can switch back to your optimal state. And optimal utilization of B1 or something like that.
Yeah, the cells need to really feel kind of sure that they really get it.
This is the video where Elliot talks about the different forms of thiamine.
Basically, synthetic just means that the molecule has been changed in some way. Doesn't necessarily mean that it is unhealthy or that it is detrimental in any way. It simply means that it's been engineered in a certain way to be able to improve the bioavailability. And so benfotiamine is a lipid-soluble or fat-soluble form, or it's thought to be fat-soluble anyway, and it does have much higher bioavailability. So it's got certain characteristics which mean that it's able to bypass the ordinary transport mechanisms. It's very useful for increasing thiamine status peripherally, so in the body, in the organs, and there's a good indication that it does get into the brain. However, that's kind of debated at the moment. Furthermore, it needs to be broken down enzymatically, so we need to alter it chemically in the liver before we can actually use the thiamine in that. Finally, we have TTFD. Now, TTFD, I believe, is the most superior form for several reasons. First of all, its bioavailability is just as good as benfotiamine, if not better. I believe it's likely better simply because it does not require a transport system in any way. So it does not require a transporter to get through from the intestine to the blood, from the blood to the brain, or from the extracellular space to get into the cell. It bypasses all ordinary transport mechanisms. Furthermore, it doesn't need to be broken down enzymatically. You don't need enzymes to break down TTFD to yield thiamine. It does it naturally in the presence of any kind of reducing agent like glutathione. Furthermore, it also has a dual function. It provides sulfur in the form of a prosthetic group which can be used, and which there's some evidence that it actually can help the body get rid of heavy metals.
I try now the normal thiamine because my body has a problem with the sulfur. There is some bloating and gas and stuff, and it appears that some people really have a problem with that. So also start with the normal thiamine and do the high doses and look what happens. Yeah.
Interesting. So how long do you see your experiment lasting, and what kind of expectations do you have?
We'll see. Because it makes so much sense to me, and also because it has been going on for such a long time. I had so many symptoms for decades, so obviously I will not stop this experiment next month already, so I will be going on for some time.
So something on the order of months, probably.
Several months, yeah. Possibly. And then see what happens. My goal also is, I have been, since 2007, I have been exercise intolerant from the mast cell activation problems. So my body gets stressed when I exercise too much, and then I get a migraine and muscle pain, fibromyalgia-like pain, and I feel extremely exhausted. So exercise for me is not beneficial but detrimental. And that's annoying because I used to be really into sports. I used to run marathons and do a lot of sports and be outdoors a lot and stuff. So my goal is to actually be able to really exercise as I used to without having this muscle pain and fatigue afterwards and migraines, because that really sucks.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, I hope you get to recover some more. So it's been quite a journey you've been on the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Recovering. So you made so much progress. I feel confident that you'll figure the rest of it out, though.
Yeah, it's my hope. Yeah.
All right. Well, did you have anything else you wanted to share?
Yes, there is that book because the authors of it's a book called Thiamine Deficiency Disease, Dysautonomia and High Calorie Malnutrition. And it's a great title. It's actually all the carbs and the stuff that people eat that really isn't food anymore. They don't get the nutrients and they don't get the thiamine from that. So many people are actually thiamine deficient, but it gets diagnosed as different diseases. And so this is a quote: genetic predisposition coupled with high calorie malnutrition results in defective cellular energy metabolism, some form of stress requiring an adaptive and energy-consuming response may therefore initiate the first symptoms of thiamine deficiency. That's it in a nutshell, basically. So I recommend to read this book, or there is a page, Hormones Matter, that's by Chandler and Dr. Derrick Lonsdale. They've written this book, and Hormones Matter is the website where you can look up all the things about thiamine deficiency. They also mention oxalates and thiamine deficiency in regarding to different things. Also trauma and chronic fatigue and things like that. It's very interesting.
We'll have to make sure and put all the links in the show notes for the book and the website. So very interesting. And Elliot Overton's work as well. So good old Elliot. He does great videos.
Yeah, he does. And all the studies, and he has the information.
Yeah, he is. Well, so we wrap it up, or did you have more you wanted to add?
Yeah, so, well, I'm at the beginning of this experiment. Just felt it's important to share for people who are not doing so well on the carnivore diet, that maybe it could be something like this. And I think whatever will improve your quality of life, it doesn't matter if it's not carnivore. I think we don't live in an ideal world anymore, and we have all those toxins, all that stress and everything being thrown at us. So maybe in some cases meat alone will not cut it, so you need to investigate more, and this is a possibility to explore.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. So most of us on the carnivore diet got here because it was the only thing that got us most of the way, or some of us all the way. But you know, plenty of people had lots of problems, lots of physical and medical problems, we'll say. And a lot of them get better, but they still have an issue with this or that. So there's a little more to it. So I applaud everybody who's in there to work it out, figure it out. So I always love a good experiment too.
Yes. Yeah, and if it doesn't work, then you can still try something else. But I must definitely say that carnivore way of eating is still the best option for me. So I wouldn't go back to plant eating or high oxalates or carbs or anything like that. So I will keep my carnivore way of eating, but on the side I will just also do that thiamine experiment and see what happens.
Excellent. All right. So we covered it all this time?
I would say so.
Yeah, well, we'll do it again when you get farther along in the experiment. We'll do it.
Yeah, and then maybe Justin can also add his experience.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we'll try and get Justin on because he's working on it too. So. All right. Well, I will thank everybody for watching, and leave us some comments and let us know if you have any experiments that you've tried with supplementing with thiamine or thiamine deficiency or vitamin B1 or anything like that, and send the link to this video on to anybody it might help, and make sure you stay subscribed. And if you haven't subscribed already, hit that subscribe button and the little bell icon and give us the old thumbs up. And everybody out there, eat some meat and feel better, and whatever you do, don't fall down that carb hole.